Welcome to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you were listening, you're having a great start to your week. Of course, Hammer Territory, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and enjoy our content wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever you choose to listen. We're also on YouTube, audio version only, but go out there and subscribe. Help us out a little bit there. Leave those 5-star reviews. We enjoy the interaction and just also the great support that our listeners have provided us, because we're here to talk with you no matter how positive or negative the circumstances are when it comes to the Braves. And I'm always glad to be joined by my podcast partner, Stephen Tolbert. And Stephen, we've talked about some pretty negative things this year so far, but when it comes to an emergency podcast edition like this is of the Hammer Territory Podcast, it's hard to say it's gotten worse than this. We're here to talk, obviously, about the latest injury news when it comes to Austin Riley. Stephen, always a pleasure to talk with you, sir, even under the most unfortunate of circumstances.
Yeah, what's up, Shawn? We're getting pretty good at this, at talking about injuries and how it's going to impact the team. The Spencer Strider injury and the Ronald Acuna Jr. injury were probably more significant just because of when they happened. We lost Spencer early in the year in April for the year. Then we lost Acuna in May for the year. And obviously those were, truly devastating injuries. But just after those is this one, because, and I thought Scott and Brad did a really good job talking about it on Sunday. It's hard to find outside of Acuna, and Acuna mainly because of his on-base skills, it's hard to find a guy who is irreplaceable as Austin Riley. One big problem is the Braves don't have anybody behind him is one reason why he's so irreplaceable. Another is just because he's so good. He's one of probably a top 5 third baseman in baseball, and those don't grow on trees, obviously. So, losing Riley, we'll get into the specifics here in a minute, but, the team said 6 to 8 weeks is the timetable. There's examples of guys coming back sooner than that. There's examples of guys coming back later than that. There's examples of guys coming back and not being the same, and it taking longer. So there's a lot of variance with that timetable. But it's just another kick to the shin of a season long of nothing but kicks to the shins. It's been a brutal year. It's been one of the worst years I can remember, in terms of injury impact to a team that had a World Series possibility in front of them. This is about as bad as I can remember for any Braves team. So yeah, it's been a rough few days. We kind of saw this coming, if I'm honest, and here we are.
So, Stephen, of course, for those who may not have, been on social media or anything like that over the past, day or so, what we're referring to, of course, is that Austin Riley was hit in the hand on Sunday in the first inning by a 97-mile-per-hour fastball, left the game in the first inning on Sunday. The scans were inconclusive, mainly because of swelling and things such as that, just could not lead to results. And then midday on Monday, it was revealed, the worst-case scenario, Austin Riley had a hand fracture, out 6 to 8 weeks. At the very least, is likely out for the rest of the regular season. We'll see what occurs if the Braves make the playoffs. But, Stephen, earlier this year, the Braves lost Riley for 2.5 to 3 weeks. And at that point, it was the idea of what Austin Riley was, the potential that he could provide, and the fact that he, has been top 7 in the MVP voting for, I believe, each of the last 3 years. But this time around, it truly is a devastating loss, because just like he did in the summer of 2021, 22, and 23, once again this summer, Austin Riley was one of the best hitters in baseball, top 6 in the National League in WOBA, WRC+, and OPS since June 14th, basically over the past 2 months. A 942 OPS, a 157 WRC+, over that time frame, just again showing how invaluable he is to a Braves offense that's kind of taken the baton and once again has become the strength of this team in the second half of the season. I say all this to say this is going to be a loss you cannot replace. When we say that he's invaluable, when we say he's the one player of this current team that you couldn't lose. That's the reason why. It's just going to be a significant impact. And the Braves, we say they're picking up the pieces once again. They really are, with just how important Austin Riley was to their current success in holding on to a playoff spot.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the offense has had problems all year long. It's been inconsistent. And now you take, like you just articulated, Austin's been as good a hitter as Ozuna's been over the last, probably 2 months, a little, maybe 2.5 months. So,
Stephen, I don't mean to interrupt you, but literally since June 14th, I can't remember which one had it, but literally since June 14th, both of them have around 240 plate appearances. One of them has a 156 WRC plus, one has a 157. They've literally been the exact same hitter, to your point.
there you go. I mean, and everybody would tell you Ozuna's been the best hitter on the team, but in the last 2.5 months, Riley's got just as much of a claim to that title. And that's how, I mean, he's really improved defensively. He's kind of a rock in that lineup. He's kind of an everyday guy. It's just I mean, it's not hyperbole to say the Braves lost the best player they had left in the lineup. Um, you can make the argument Ozuna's better. You can make the argument Olson's better if you look at career numbers, but you can also make the argument that after Acuna, the second best player on the team is Austin Riley, and now they've lost him. And so, and like Scott and Brad articulated last night, there's just nothing behind him. I mean, the Braves probably the weakest area of their farm system, which is not a great farm system to begin with, is probably the corners, third base, first base, a corner outfield. They don't have anything there. So we're going to get into some replacement options here in a minute, but yeah, I mean, there's really no quantifying just how big a loss this is. I mean, it's they're not dead in the water because they still got a 2-game lead and they still got a lot of talent on the team. But for a lot of people, this felt like one more injury than they could really realistically sustain. I don't know if that'll be true. We'll find out over the next 6 weeks. This team is pretty resilient. It still has quite a bit of talent on there, but at some point, it's just so many injuries that you can't realistically do anything. And again, after Acuna, there's a very strong argument that the next best overall player on the team. I'm not talking about pitchers. Obviously, with pitchers, you got to talk about Chris Sale and Max Fried. But in terms of position players, there's a strong argument that after Acuna, the next best player was Austin Riley, and now he's out for probably the rest of the regular season and maybe longer. So yeah, it's a massive bummer, and I haven't checked out of the 2024 season. We're still going to be here talking about it and covering it every day, but at some point you do get to a level of injuries where you're just like, okay, like, it might just not be our year. When I know you're a Memphis Grizzlies guy, Shawn, and I know you guys just went through this on the NBA side where you just like, okay, we literally lost our entire damn team. Sometimes it's just not your year. The Braves haven't gotten to that point yet. It's not quite that bad. They still have a lot of talent left, but it is dwindling by the day.
Now, while the Braves are certainly missing Austin Riley and will miss him moving forward, one thing I don't want you to miss out on is the opportunity to make your day better by going to a reliable source when it comes to your nightly meals, and that's HelloFresh.
Big shout out to America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh, for helping us eat good during this busy time of the year for us. With HelloFresh, you get pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. It's home cooking made easy, fun, and affordable.
HelloFresh makes it easy, even for picky eaters like Scott. There's a changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from each week. Customize it to fit your taste. There's protein and veggie swap options too. The recipes are easy to follow. Just choose your delivery day, open your box, cook, and eat.
My house is busy with sports, but family dinners are important. My fam eats better, healthier, and we cook so much easier with HelloFresh.
And for a limited time, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/FTKids to unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for 2 months while subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/FTKids.
Absolutely. And I think that my response to that is this, is that, in one aspect, there's, realistic expectations. And then the other aspect, there's actual reality. And in reality, yes, the Braves still have a chance to make this a special season. It's going to take quite a bit of things going in their favor moving forward. As we are recording this podcast, the Mets hit a walk-off home run against the Orioles. So the Braves are now 1.5 games in the lead for the final wild card playoff spot. I want to make it clear. And I'll get to a bit of support for this in just a moment. Yes, the Braves still do have a realistic chance of making the playoffs. But in terms of expectations, I don't blame anyone for watching the rest of the season without expectations. I know that you never want to blame injuries, but I'm blaming injuries. I understand that we've had underperformance. I understand that we've had a very streaky offense. I get that. But no one could have gone into this season expecting for this many of the Braves' best players to be hit by this many injuries and for them to all be out for a significant duration of the season. I'm not going to go through the whole list because we don't have 2 hours to do this podcast, but injuries have not derailed the season as of yet, but they certainly have taken expectations off the track, derailed expectations, however you want to say it. Injuries have played a huge part in this season going nowhere according to plan for the Braves. So from a fan's perspective, watching the rest of the season without expectations, I don't blame you a bit. But I will say this, Stephen, I think the team still is fully focused on making the most of this season. And 2 reasons why are Chris Sale and Marcell Ozuna. Chris Sale right now, the Triple Crown, leader in strikeouts, wins, and ERA, the clear Cy Young favorite. Marcell Ozuna is going after an actual Triple Crown. Those 2 players playing at the level that they are, that's going to keep the Braves in the race. And then I think that this is even more significant. If we get to that wild card round of the playoffs, I think you can make a clear argument that no matter who the Braves play, they're going to have the best pitcher and best hitter in that series in Sale and Ozuna. And you could also say they could easily have the second best hitter in Olsen and the second best pitcher in Fried if both of them are right by that time. So yes, reality-wise, the Braves still have plenty of reason to play, but expectations-wise, I don't blame anyone for not having them moving forward. It's just so much you can overcome. And while the Braves still can make this season certainly worthwhile, it's going to take a lot going right for them moving forward.
Yeah. The funny thing is the Braves are kind of moved into a sweet spot where they have enough talent where they could still do a lot of damage in September and October. I mean, like you said, they still have Ozuna and Olsen and Soler and Michael Harris and Shawn Murphy and Jared Kelenic. Like, they still have enough players where they could do some damage if guys get hot at the right time. And of course, they have a fantastic pitching staff. Chris Sale, Max Fried, Spencer Swellenbach, Ronaldo Lopez, a really good bullpen, a great closer. Like, they have enough talent still, even after the Riley injury, where they could do damage. But now they get to do it free of expectation. And sometimes when you get to do it free of expectation, it just frees you up because you feel like you're playing with house money anyways. And I do wonder if this team is just going to be like, you know what? What the hell? We got nothing to lose. Nobody's expecting us to do anything. We got an all-star team on the IL. Everybody's just expecting us to fold. There's no expectation. It's like a free roll. You're playing with house money. And I do wonder if this team maybe rallies around this and actually taps into the rest of the talent they have on this roster. Because like I said, it's still a pretty good amount of talent. That just speaks to how talented this team was when we started this back in March, that they've lost this much and still have this much talent left. And again, when you get to the point where you have a lot of talent and very little expectation, which is, I think, the point we've reached now, some special things can happen. So, I'm not going to try to paint this as a positive. It's not. It's a dark cloud over the season that's already had plenty of storms. But the Braves are kind of freed up now. It's house money time. It's a free roll, and nobody is expecting them to do anything. and they got plenty of talent to make some noise. So I'm going to be ready to see what happens over the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, and the good thing is that, hey, if you make that free roll and you wind up rolling, a couple of lucky numbers, hey, the last time we saw a team play really free of expectations, it was 2021 when the Braves won the World Series. I'm not going to sit here and compare that team to this team because I think that they're two different, setups right now, and just a lot of things went right in 2021. We haven't seen that happen yet for this Braves team. Maybe it will happen, but to your point, the chance is still there for this team to get to having the chance that they want. And if they do, if they can get in the playoffs and get past that wild card round, then you're clearly within the timetable where Austin Riley at 100% could return. And then that definitely can help things. And of course, we'll get Ozzie Albies back as time goes on. But I think that we thoroughly covered the obvious negative of losing Riley. Obviously covered trying to keep the glass half full in terms of how the team can respond to this. But you're not going to replace Austin Riley, obviously, on the roster. But, Steven, the Braves definitely have a need at third base now. You can't play Luke Williams every day. He's just not productive enough. We've already heard reports that Whit Merrifield is not going to, move over to third base, and the Braves are going to see, different options at second base. The Braves are likely going to figure out who's going to give them their best option by putting someone at third base. There are some internal options, maybe external options, but let's start with the internal options. Steven, there's not much to choose from, but when you look internally, what makes the most sense to you when it comes to the most reliable option the Braves can just, play nearly every day at third base?
Well, I mean, you would say off the top of your head that, one of their best position player prospects is an infielder in Nacho Alvarez. And he's played shortstop, he's played second base, he's played third base. The problem is, according to Mark Bowman of MLB.com, he's got pneumonia right now, and he hasn't played in like a week, and he's still down. So if he's going to be the choice, he's certainly not going to be the choice right away. Brian Anderson is still in the minors. He's no longer in the 40-man, so they would have to make a 40-man move to get him back up. But Brian Anderson has played Major League third base. He played for the Brewers. He played for the Marlins. I'm sure Braves fans will remember him. So, and again, he's played third base. He's played right field. In terms of like a guy who's actually got major league caliber talent, again, there's no great answers here. Internally, that's probably the number one guy. There's Yuli Gurriel, who hasn't played third, but he has played a little bit of second. They would have to move Whit Merrifield around, but there's reports that they're really not interested in doing that. I would guess Brian Anderson would be my guess in terms of an internal option. We'll talk about external options in here in a second, but yeah, there's not. I mean, again, this is kind of what Scott and Brad were alluding to last night, is that there's really no great option here. If Nacho was healthy, you might feel comfortable there, but he had such a rough, time with the Braves when he was up last time. I don't even know if they'd want to try that again. So, yeah, Brian Anderson is probably, just in terms of the most sense, guys who played third base at the major league level before. I would guess it's him, but that's a total guess. That's just going off of history and skills and talent levels. So, there's not a lot in the minors, which is one of the big problems with losing Riley to begin with.
And as we mentioned, there's not really a lot of, it's understandable that there's not expectations. There's a reason, not to have expectations when it comes to this season. So for the Braves, they don't have a lot of certainty, obviously, when it comes to internal options that could replace Austin Riley. Not replace him, obviously, but give them some source of production at third base. So what in this case would make sense for the Braves to pursue? Well, to me, it's the thing that I myself, I know I have said numerous times over the past several years, and I know others have alluded to it as well. It's the Braves' ability to bring in talents that have had previous success elsewhere before, in recent times have struggled, but then when they got to Atlanta, they performed better. Obviously, Jorge Soler is a great example. Whit Merrifield is a great example. Ramon Laureano is a great example. So potentially one thing that we could see the Braves do is either of current options that are already out there or maybe options that could be out there in the coming days and weeks. The Braves could find an external option that they like, bring that person in, and maybe they're able to get production by making adjustments to their approach at the plate. I bring up one name, Gio Urshela, who had played with the Tigers when they released him, several days ago. He had nearly 120 WRC plus from 2019 to 2022. Now, last year he had an injury-plagued season. This year there's been very little production with the bat, but he's someone they potentially could bring in. Kevin Biggio, I know, he's got, lineage with his last name. He's never really been a productive major leaguer. He's someone that can make sense. And we could see another name or two that's released in time. But Stephen, to me, that may be another option as well. The Braves finding a profile that they are at least intrigued by, bringing that talent in and seeing if they could, perform that, rekindle that magic once again of helping that player refine their, the production that they once had at the major league level.
Yeah, I think it's going to be probably one of those guys, either Biggio or Urshela. My guess is Gio Urshela will be the guy, just based off availability and again, skill set. But they might prefer Brian Anderson. They might just like his potential more. We'll see what they do. I don't think it's going to be Luke Williams. I know he came in for Austin when Austin got hurt, but he was literally the only other infielder on the roster at the time, so they had no other choice. But the Braves are going to have to make some sort of infield move before tomorrow's game, because right now they only have four infielders on the roster, and Luke Williams is one of them. So they'll make some move either. I don't know exactly the timetable on Urshela. I don't know. He's on waivers right now from the Tigers. I don't know how long he's been on waivers or how long he's got left before he's either claimed by a team or clears and can sign with anybody. It might not be by tomorrow. If that's the case, then I do expect probably Brian Anderson to come up. But yeah, long term, I'm guessing they go make a move like that. Just claim a guy who's had success at times, and maybe they can rekindle some of that success with the Braves. Again, like you said, there's no expectation. I mean, it's a even for the guy who replaces Riley, it's a bit of a free roll because no one's going to expect anything. It's you're not going to bat in the 2-hole like Austin was. You're probably going to be batting 8th or 9th, and anything you give the team is going to be considered a bonus. So, it's a pretty good spot for somebody to come in who hasn't had a great year, hasn't had a good couple of years, to maybe try to find some success, get some consistent playing time. I will say this, when Ozzie comes back, and the last report we got that Ozzie was going to come back kind of early September. Once that happens, I would expect Whit Merrifield to move over to third. So it might not be a long-term problem if Ozzie stays on schedule and gets back and can man second. And then you can move Whit over to third, who's been really good for the Braves. And then it's not as big a deal. So this might only be a 2-week issue, but you still got to have somebody for 2 weeks. So it's going to be interesting what they do. And my guess is they go get one of these waiver claim guys. If they get to the Braves, there's always a chance a team ahead of them in the waiver priority snags them before the Braves can. But yeah, my guess it's going to be one of those guys, and they'll get a chance to, have another shot at having a successful career or a successful season in the majors.
Absolutely. And I know that, there's a lot of fun potential scenarios that could be out there, just, to throw defensive value out the window, go with as much offense as possible in the lineup, especially with the fact that, I know some may see, well, it's a short-term window, so why not get creative as possible in that short term? I think actually it being a short-term window till Ozzie comes back makes it less likely that they get really, really, outside the box. I think they find someone that's got experience at third base that can, in some way, shape, or form off just a little bit of production, something tangible over the next few weeks until they got Ozzie back and then figure it out from there. But of course, one other aspect of this team that's worth discussing, Stephen, is how the batting lineup is going to work. Now, I think against right-handers, you have it pretty clear. You just basically put Michael Harris up at the top of the order. I could see you making a case you could lead him off, but I also understand the Braves maybe going Soler, Michael Harris, Ozuna, Matt Olson, and then, the catcher spot. I know that, Orlando Arcia has batted 5th, but that top 4, I just basically think you put Michael Harris up in the top 4 of the batting order in front of Ozuna, where Riley was against right-handers. Now, against left-handers, potentially you go with another option, up there with Soler, Ozuna, and Olsen. But what are your thoughts on the batting lineup? I know that, again, you're not going to replace Riley, but do you have any, outside the box thinking when it comes to kind of putting the batting order, structuring it in a way where, again, you're not going to replace Riley, but at the very least, one thing we've seen the benefit of, Scott and Brad talked about this, one thing we've seen the benefit of is the Braves getting on base more. Do you get a little bit outside the box, put one of your better on base options up there at the top of the order, or do you just go with your best overall talents, leave Michael Harris up there regardless of who's pitching?
My guess is they do Soler, Michael Harris, Ozuna, Olsen as the top 4 every day, and then switch it up. Snit's done some weird stuff with kind of the 5 through 9. Sometimes Arcia's 5, which has been weird. Sometimes like you'll have like Shawn Murphy 8, which I haven't fully understood. If it was me, I would do Soler, Harris, Ozuna, Olsen. Then the catcher, whoever the catcher is, 5. And then probably at this point, I would probably go Liriano 6. Arcia 7, whoever the third baseman is, 8th. And then try to keep Whit Merrifield in that 9 spot, because I think his on base has really helped feed the top of the lineup, and that's been a positive for the offense. Plus his speed really helps when you get those big guys back up on the up to the plate. So I would try to keep Whit in the 9 hole if I could. I would probably just go Soler, Michael, Ozuna, Olsen 1 through 4, catcher 5. And then whatever, other outfitter you're going to play, whether it's Kelnick or Liriano, and then, Arcia and whoever you get at third base. I'm assuming it's going to be a relatively weak hitter until Ozzie comes back. So I don't think you have any problem, batting them close to the bottom of the order. I'm assuming they're not going to go get an all-star level player. So it's going to be somebody who's relatively weak hitter, bat him 8th, bat Merrifield 9. And I think that's probably the best you could roll out at this point. You could probably adjust a couple of things in there, but if you make me king of the Braves, that's probably what I roll out starting on Tuesday.
Absolutely. And so we could talk about who potentially could be a replacement, internal, external at third base. We could talk about how the batting order potentially lines up. But one thing that I think nobody will mistake at all is the fact that the Braves need some players to step up. Now, Ozuna has done his job all season. Soler, hopefully when he gets back from his injury, hopefully he'll be back in the lineup tomorrow night. He's done his job since the trade deadline, and Travis d'Arnaud has done his job all season long. Hopefully he's fine as well from being hit over the weekend. 3 players who stand out to me, Stephen, who really, really need, and also again, Loriano and Merrifield have done great, but 3 players who really need to find their groove. Michael Harris II, Matt Olson, who you said multiple times is the most important part of this second half of the season, and Shawn Murphy. Now, to the credit of each of those 3 players, Murphy and Olson have been great over the past few weeks. Michael Harris has looked very good since coming back. They need to figure out how to stay that way. If this team still has playoff aspirations, there's no other choice. Those 3 have to be at a productive level. I think they can be, but now more than ever, that's where this Braves team needs their production. They need those 3 guys in the top 5 of their order, and they need all 3 of them to be productive.
Yeah. I mean, Harris and Olsen specifically, because once again, you're losing, what Riley was great at was Riley could hit left-handers and right-handed pitchers. And there's not a lot of guys in the Braves lineup that can do both. And because of that, you've lost another weapon against right-handed pitching. And I've been beating this drum all year, but the Braves' weakest side is against right-handed pitching. And so, the first place I always look is the left-handers, and it's Olsen and it's Michael Harris. And if those guys can be great, I don't know if good is going to be good enough anymore. Like you said, they've been good in the second half. Like Shawn Murphy's had a really good second half. Olsen's had a good second half. Michael Harris has looked good since he got back. But if those guys can turn it on and be great, especially the left-handers, then yes, this team still can make noise. I mean, it's still got talent. Soler's been really good. Ozuna's been really good. The bottom of the lineup has been better with Merrifield and Loriano. So like if if Olsen and Michael Harris and the catchers, who've also been really good, if those guys, if those guys can jump it up maybe another notch into, closer to great, then this team can still accomplish a lot. There's a lot of talent on this team. Honestly, the Braves still probably have more talent than a lot of the other wild card teams. If they got into a wild card round, even at this state where they've lost so much, they probably still have the talent advantage. If they went up against, I don't know, the Reds or the Cubs, or, if somebody crazy got in, even like the Mets, I think they probably still have more talent than the Mets. So they still have a ton of talent on this team. They have no more margin for error. They cannot, they can't have any more injuries. And they can't have any more underperformance. Like, all of the margin of error is gone. They need all their guys to stay healthy, and they need all their guys to play really good baseball. And if they do that, they have enough talent to make noise. But, gone are the days where they can afford for 3 or 4 of these guys to underperform expectations and still win games. Like, that's out the door now. Like, if guys don't play to their talent levels from now until the end of the year, then the Braves will be watching October from their couch. And, with the amount of injuries they had, no one's going to really blame them for that, but that's just the reality at this point. They don't have enough. They don't have so much talent now that they can afford to live with underperformance. It's they need their best guys to be great. And hopefully, now that the expectations are kind of off, maybe that lightens some of the pressure and guys just explode and have great, the last 6 weeks of the season. We'll all find out together.
And the last thing that I'll point out, Stephen, is that, I know that, that this roster, Justin Toscano, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, had a really good article, in which Ramon Laureano used a very, short, sweet, but very, very appropriate one-word response when it came to Austin Riley getting hit in his hand. And I think that it reflects how nearly everyone in the franchise and the fan base thought when they saw that. It definitely is going to be an impactful loss to the clubhouse, to the performance on the field, what have you. But this team, another area where they don't have a margin for error, they have no time to sit here and kind of, be in self-pity, to where they're negatively impacted, because you've got a series coming up against the Phillies. After that, the Twins, the Nationals, and then the Phillies again to take you into early September. I'll be honest with you, I'm not worried about the division. I find it very unlikely the Braves are going to make a run at the division. If they do, great, but I'm not worried about that. But the other thing that stands out is that, again, as mentioned, a few moments ago, the Mets walked off the Baltimore Orioles tonight, and so the Braves are now 1.5 games up in the wild card. But the Mets have the Orioles, the Padres, and the Diamondbacks. It may be reverse order for San Diego and Arizona. So the other 3 teams who right now are clearly in that wild card hunt, 4 teams for 3 spots in the National League along with the Braves, they're going to be playing each other over the next 2 weeks. The Mets are going to have to play both of the other wildcard teams over the next 2 weeks. The opportunity is there for, if the Braves can catch some type of fire, they can again put a little bit of distance between them and the Mets, potentially, but they're going to have to play to their advantage. So, Stephen, my main point is that, yes, it's devastating. Yes, it sucks. And yes, nobody can blame this Braves team for feeling bad about all this that's going on, especially to all these players they're all close with, but they have no time to sit here and focus on that. If they still want to make the most of this season, or at least have the chance to, they've got to respond quickly, in an opportunity for them to potentially further themselves from the Mets with a tough schedule coming up for New York.
Yep. It's quite literally win or go home. And again, there's no real pressure on this team, quite honestly. No one expects anything of them, and I'm going to be very see how they respond. If they come out against Philadelphia and get their ass kicked for 3 games, then this season's probably going to go one way. And if they come out, and really start playing really good baseball and take 2 of 3 or even sweep them, then I could see this season going another way. We'll learn a lot about how they come out in this next game. And, the one thing they still have is they still have really good pitching. And, that covers up a lot. If you're only giving up 2 or 3 runs a game, your offense doesn't have to be great. They have enough talent. They have enough talent on offense, in a large part because of how little their offense has to do because of their pitching, if that makes sense. And, when you have that kind of pitching, both in the rotation and the bullpen, it can really carry you. And that, that's another side the Braves are going to really need to keep it up is the pitching staff. This is not the time where the pitching staff can go through a lull and ask the offense to cover up 5 or 6 runs a night. The Braves are going to need their pitchers to keep doing it, keep, being amazing like they have all year. And, if everybody plays to their talent level, again, I think this team can still accomplish a lot. This team still has a lot of talent. And again, with the pressure off, I'm very interested to see what happens over the next week or so to see how they respond to this. Because this was like Liriano said. We can't repeat the word he said, but this was a crushing injury. And it would not surprise me to see the team come out and really respond well, but it also wouldn't surprise me to see, they come out and look really flat against Philly and get, demolished for 3 games. And maybe the season just starts, going downhill after that. I don't know which is going to happen. I wouldn't be stunned by either, but it's going to be very interesting to see how they respond the next 3 days against Philly. And my guess is that's going to set the tone for the rest of the year.
And the best way to do it, in my opinion, is just to take it one game at a time and see what happens. Again, we've seen this team be able to overcome odds so many times before. None probably to the extent that they're having to overcome right now with all the losses to injuries that they've had. But at this point, the Braves just want a chance. They're in control of their own destiny. They can make the most of their opportunity. And I don't think anybody will question that this team is going to remain confident regardless of what they come across. If they can find a way to be able to at least win a game in this series and be competitive. And if they win multiple games in this series, then heck yeah, more powerful to them. Again, I could see it happening just like you, Steven, but I could also see it going the other way. The point is, if you just focus on one game at a time, you get that first win, it becomes easier to accomplish that second win. We saw them do it this past week after the devastating weekend that they had in Colorado. They came back and responded beautifully. Hopefully they'll do that once again, and we'll really see this team be able to give themselves a chance. And hey, once again, even though there's a good chance that this could be the last we see of Austin Riley this season, I bet in that clubhouse what the most resounding theme is right now is let's give Austin a chance to play again this year. And for this Braves team, if that happens, that means a lot of things are going their way in terms of a playoff pursuit. Steven, do you have anything else for us on this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
Nope. Whatever happens, we'll be here to cover it. Good or bad. This podcast has had some dark days and has covered some pretty brutal stuff this year, but one thing we do is we will cover it regardless. So we are very appreciative of the people that continue to listen, continue to download. The support has been unbelievable. So big shout out to you guys. And yeah, whatever happens the rest of the year, we'll be here to talk about it.
Absolutely. For Stephen Tolbert, you can find him at B_outliers on Twitter. My name is Shawn Coleman. You could find me at StatsSAC on X/Twitter as well. Make sure you find at Hammer Territory across all forms of social media, including Facebook. And go out there and subscribe on YouTube. It's audio only, but that's just another place that you can find all the great content when it's available. For Stephen Tolbert, my name's Shawn Coleman. Until next time, even though Austin Riley is going to be out for the rest of the regular season, there's still plenty of reason for this team to have success and make the most of this opportunity. And if they can, maybe we'll see Austin Riley once again in 2024. Until next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory podcast.